This
Mhm.
African Union was given to us by our ancestors. It is the
Mhm.
biggest institution that we have and that we need to
Mhm.
make use of and we need to be proud of and we need to build it, we need to protect it, we need to keep it. It doesn't
Mhm.
matter whether there are individuals there or some people are not working well in that house. It doesn't mean that we have to give it up. It is the same thing
Mhm.
like the continent. The continent is our sole source of
Mhm.
existence, is our root, is our everything. It doesn't matter whether the continent functions well or it doesn't
Mhm.
function well. That is our
Mhm.
identity. We need to embrace it. We need to hold
Mhm.
it. We need to keep it. We need to develop it.
Mhm.
We need to be proud of it. What is your opinion on that, particularly on this idea of us going forward?
If you look at the African Union, it's something that we inherit from the pioneers, from our fathers, from the people that we look up to for old good leadership qualities. And they had an objective, they had a mission, and they had visions. These individuals sacrificed their entire life, they sacrificed their entire time just to see the betterment of the continent. People like Nkrumah could have been doing other things other than running in public, trying to see the betterment of Ghana or trying to see the betterment of a continent like Africa because they have all other opportunities. They could have lived in the West like any other person, not even thinking about this continent. But they sacrifice all the opportunities at the time, dedicate their entire life to bringing us as a people together. So that means a lot for our history, that means a lot for our heritage, and that means a lot for our culture. They had standing values in which they wanted us as a continent to believe in that we cannot build a continent without knowledge, that we cannot build a continent without vision, that we cannot build a continent without good leadership qualities, that we cannot build a continent without understanding the real self in us, and that is us as a people. So today, us as youths, us as African leaders, we all need a spirit of Pan Africanism. We all need the same spirit that this individual have at the time. We have to come together as one. We have to use the African Union as a union that is going to unite the continent. We have to use the African Union as a union that is going to provide solution to the African problem. We
Yeah.
have to use the African Union as a reference for all governance strategies, for all policy development within the African continent. And we can do that, but we have to understand ourselves and understand the value that we can play when we come together as a people. We understand that there is so much, like differences when it comes to ethnic groups and others within the continent. Nkrumah was aware of this reality. He knew it more than any of us. But despite that, they put all sacrifice just to see that we come together as one people. The same thing, if you look at Julius Nyerere and etc., they sacrificed their entire time just trying to see the unification of their countries, the unification of the African continent, because that is where the power lies. We need to come together as one in order to open up markets within the continent to promote a regional integration in trade, in culture, to be able to understand each other as a people and solve our matters, solve our problems using our own internal institutions. And the first one is the African Union. So it
Yes.
is a union that we must understand that we inherited it and we need to value it because the pioneers of it have done a huge sacrifice for us as a continent. So that is something that we should realize as youths and something that our leaders within the continent have to realize. Today, no matter how far that we go, no matter how rich that we become, we must have to understand that we belong to Africa. And for us to be recognized with the dignity and respect, we must go back, we must solve the societal problems that we have within the African continent. And the reference point to that is the African Union. So if the African Union is underperforming, then we have a responsibility to change it, starting with producing a new breed of leaders, starting with producing a new generation of Africans that are going to be aware of the real value of the African continent, that are going to be well equipped with knowledge, that are going to be well oriented with African development, to see Africa first before any other continent around the globe. That is what we should celebrate, and that is how we should embrace the AU as a union. Thank you.
It is very motivating, because like we're saying, we cannot unite Africa, we cannot develop and leaving behind some of the very vital institutions that is our own. Today we talk about the European Union and they're making reforms, and yesterday we were educated about even the challenges that they have been going through, and they have made enormous progress also. And this progress is what we are not talking about. We're really looking forward to get an in-house correspondent from the African Union to minister to us. I mean, like to educate us on these challenges, so as to give the way forward for young people to be able to work on that agenda. Do you think that should be the right step of communication? Because we need also information on how we can support to work together for the benefit of Africa.
Thank you very much. Um, there are these key things that are very, very fundamental in any development strategy: information, communication. If we have all the beautiful policies in the AU and yet we have communication failures, we cannot attain that objective.
Correct.
So, having individuals to serve as our correspondent that will be feeding us daily on the activities of the African Union is going to raise that awareness, and it's going to give us the opportunity to understand what is actually going on. And it is only when we understand the things on the ground that we can either develop solution to, or we can have a way in order to participate in. But most of the time, the problem that we have as a people is accessing information. We don't get to know the reality at the ground. And the problem is that we already have media platforms that it is not in their interest for us to see some of these things that we have. And those are the platforms that have been intercepting the right information that we need as a people in our own continent. And we have to be aware of that. And at the same time, people serving at the African Union must understand that they are serving a people, that they are serving a nation, and they should be responsible to those individuals. People deserve to know better. People deserve to access information. And it is only through that we can bring about the changes that we want. But if I don't know what is happening, I cannot even talk about it, talk less of bringing a change. So it is vital, it is very, very important if we can have individuals that are going to be giving us minutes or be giving us information on platforms like this, to make sure that our brothers and sisters in the diaspora, Africans staying within the continent, are aware of what is going on in a union like the African Union, just to make sure that people can take action, because communication is very key. It is only through communication that you can persuade individuals to take action. You can persuade individuals to become responsible. You can inspire individuals to invest. So that is why it is very, very vital. It is very, very instrumental for individuals, and what our daily initiatives at the African Union is bring out clearly for the Africans individuals to see, because they're there for us. They're not there for the buildings. They're not just there for the structures. They are not just there for the money that we pay them on monthly basis. They are there for a purpose. and that is feeding the society with the right information, coming up with solution to the societal problems. And now we have so many internal issues that we should solve as a continent.
Mhm.
We have to be aware of those realities as well. We cannot just celebrate, the continent like that without addressing the problems that we have at the grassroots level. And the
Mhm.
African Union is the main center that should be solving those problems. And
Correct.
as we speak, we already have problems going on. So they need to act now, and they need to communicate. They need to be given the right information to individuals at the right time to make sure that we can take actions correctly.
Correct. I'm really happy to announce this because we are talking about the need for us to develop, and it all comes also influencing the need for us as African people to reconcile our differences. If we don't
Mhm,
reconcile our differences from the grassroots to the top to the diaspora, to be able to have a spirit of community, of love, of togetherness, it will be difficult for us even to access quality information. It will be difficult for us even to communicate positively. So, the two key points and what I'm coming for is we have that link. And I was so happy
mhm,
for those that did not watch the program yesterday that Dr. Arikana Shikomborikwa and her organization, the our ADDI, is the bridge that is connecting us, and they are going to really be giving us the fact checked points on what is happening in the African Union that the diaspora need to be aware of. And the very one essential thing that she said was like, it is like a tracking. And we know she is the former
mhm,
US ambassador to the African Union. And so there's some expertise. She's not going to play the favor game or the blame game. What her
mhm,
organization is set to doing is to
mhm,
play on the table to
mhm,
say all of us have to be on the table of equal terms. And then
mhm,
one other a project that she launched that we are calling on you viewers to do it right now as we speak is our ADDI needs 1 million subscribers on that on that platform to be able for us to get a seat on the African Union upcoming meeting to address the issues of the diaspora. And so we're calling on all of you that are watching, go to the homepage www.ouraddi.org and sign in, give your name and your contact to this petition. It is very essential for all of us to have those 1 million signatories to be able to position. Because one of it that we realized was the sixth African nation, which is the diaspora, doesn't have a seat at the table in the African Union. And this is what she is working that we can achieve. And that would be the first tremendous step to push on the development and to support the building of the African Union to another stage. Yeah. Going back to you, Osman, you have been
mhm.
on the trail for all this. I'm just so excited because after your show with us, I mean, you're everywhere. How is that for you?
Yeah, thank you so much. And it has always been fine because this is something that I always love doing, and that is to be able to speak with my brothers and sisters on the betterment of the continent. And
Mhm.
these platforms have helped me, in expanding those scopes, because today I am able to communicate with my brothers everywhere within the continent.
Mhm.
And I am able to speak with my brothers and sisters in the diaspora as well. And that is how we can understand the African problem. And it is only through that we can be able to address it. And also, sometimes it gives me an opportunity to hear about the real story of so many individuals within the African continent and even people at the diaspora.
Correct.
Some will call me and said like they've spent 20 years, more than 20 years in the Western world, trying to look for solutions. Some have missed the continent for more than 20 years, not knowing what is going on within the continent. And some individuals, you come to realize that they have difficulties in their own lives in some of the countries in which they are. And we are able to talk about this I am able to listen to them. I am able to learn from them. And also, they have given me hope. And they also have trust in the African youths that they or us as a people are going to bring the change that they have always been looking for. So that is something commendable, something that I am really happy about. And of course, it has also given me another opportunity to link with individuals who have been there way before me. I am able to connect with people that are experienced and they are working on to see the betterment of the continent. People that have I have always been watching online, of course. Now I can at least hear directly from them about their views and what they think we need to do as a people. And they've also been providing guidance, they've also been coaching, and they've been giving me a lot of advices. So thank you.
This is excellent. And particularly even the public institutions like, I follow you and I saw, even your national TV inviting you for discussions and even some,
Mhm.
like some public opinion. Do you think that this is really a kind of a positive energy? And when we used to think that our leaders don't listen, they don't take us into consideration, and now you're speaking and they're inviting you, do you think it's an opening for you to be the voice out there, and also that they're taking us seriously?
Yeah, like as you know, the issue is that in many a times we find it difficult to have a cordial relationship as African youths and our own African government. So
Mhm.
what we have now is an opportunity that if I am to be listened to, if they are ready to listen to somebody like me, then we must try to multiply myself as much as possible.
Correct.
We need to have Ousman Touray in every country in Africa, and
Mhm.
we need to have more of Ousman Touray within the Gambia and within other African countries.
Correct.
So if they are ready to listen to us, then we must try to multiply ourselves as much as we can. It is only through that we can bring the change. But this change cannot be done by one individual. It has to come from the minority, but we must expand as much as we can. So we are optimistic that the African youths can bring change. And I have been trying to build networks with so many group of individuals, like movements, organizations within the continent. And the most important thing is that you find out that many African youths are doing all that they can to make sure that they see the betterment of the continent.
Mhm.
So our governments, for instance, when we come together as a force, they will have no option but to listen to us.
Mhm.
That will become the only option.
Correct.
So that is why we need to work together.
I'm just so curious. Like I got even some requests for people who wanted to contact you, and
Mhm.
it was so enormous that people are contacting you in the diaspora in the Caribbean, and they want solutions on how they can embrace Africa, how they can get this kind of spirit. I'm really just curious. What is it that you advise them to do?
Yeah, in most cases, these are the kind of questions that people will ask you is, yes, young man, you're talking about this, but is it possible? So the only thing that I know, continue telling them is that people at the diaspora, for instance, I make it very, very clear to them that, hey, you're right. It is true that you are in a particular place, or it is true that you are in a particular environment, or you are in a particular country, wherever around the world. But let us see this. Did you understand about the African reality? Did you understand about the continent as individuals? That history is what we need to have. You see, no matter how an Asian travel, they always have that patriotism that, hey, they're going back to Asia, whether in China, whether in Vietnam, whether in Singapore, they're going back. If all Africans also have the same mentality, that, hey, no matter how far we travel from the continent, no matter how long we stay, we have to go back. Because let me tell you this, Our education system, again in Africa, always make people to distance themselves from the reality the more they acquire good education.
Mhm.
So I always give them a reference of a book that I've read by Robert Chambers, talking about the disconnection that normally happen with elites, for instance. That when we study in primary school, we can stay at the village level. When we move on to high school, we go to the towns and cities. When we do our first university degree, we think about going to the West for masters. When we do our masters and our PhDs in the West, we start working for international organizations.
Mhm.
When do we work for our people? That is what we need to understand, and that is what we need to fight for. So the continent need us. And funnily, like I have been speaking with individuals just this morning and last night, for instance. I spoke with a brother who is in South Korea,
Mhm.
developing skills, learning a lot. And his sole intention is going back to Nigeria and serve his community.
Mhm.
So the African governments have a responsibility that even if African youths are equipped with knowledge, sometimes they come back with frustration in their own communities, and that is not right.
Correct.
We need to provide an environment where people will be able to showcase their talent, will be able to showcase their skills, so that we can register the development that we desire. We don't import a development for this continent. The development of this continent cannot come from outsiders, it has to come from within. Africans can travel as much as possible wherever they want to go. Let them go, learn about the world, understand about the world reality, but then impact in your own society. When Marcus Garvey, for instance, started Pan-Africanism with all the individuals that he worked with, like Sylvester, like Ladipo Solanke and others, Marcos himself had to travel within America. He
Mhm.
had to travel within Europe to discover where and what is the status of black people around.
Mhm.
He discovered that in wherever he goes, they were the least developed people. So that was how he decided to use himself as an instrument of change. So people must travel as wide as possible to get the inspiration and to get the recognition that they have to have in order to help their continent to survive.
Mhm.
When you go around and look into our brothers and sisters, when we go around and look into other societies and the way they make it, that should be an inspiration for us to come and improve the continent, but not a force that is going to make us to stay away from the continent. This
Mhm.
is the message that I try to convey, and thank God most of them accept it. They will
Mhm.
call me, and by the end of the call they will be like, I'm convinced that I have to come and act. And that is the most important thing. We must not just sit and say our leaders are failing us, so therefore we should run away.
Mhm.
We understand Africa have a leadership problem that is well understood. But then, in order to change this leadership problem, we have to come together as one to understand that we are the very instrument of change. Some leaders, we do not put them in power. Other groups of individuals living outside of the continent sponsor them, put them in power, impose them on us for them to be working for them. So when they are failing, they are not failing because they are not working for us. They're failing because they are there to comply with another individual's command. In order for us to change that, we must work together as one. We must understand ourselves as brothers and sisters and see ourselves as the instrument of change for the continent.
Good. Yes, you made it very clean and clear. We know that one of the challenges, hey, ladies and gentlemen, like I said, we're going to be opening up the lines to take your questions and also to take your contributions. Why? Because we are the voice of Pan-Africanism and African people worldwide. Why? Every contribution is a guest. So we have the main guest, like Osman, that is here with us, but you all watching me are also guests. All of us have a contribution to make to the development of Africa. All of us have solutions. All of us have suggestions. So one of the key points of the Pan-African Daily TV is to offer Africans the possibility to develop Africa through a collective contribution. So make sure you start writing down your contribution and you start setting up your questions if you have one. The only thing is please keep it short and go straight to the point because we want to open the lines and everybody has to, or everybody who feels has to contribute something should have the opportunity to be a part on this program. Now, I come back to you, Ousman. You said something that is very pertinent, and we're going to get into another topic tomorrow that is also in the same line. You said we all know that Africa has a leadership problem, of course. But one thing that we are also researching and saying that Africa has, that is one of the biggest problem apart from leadership, is capacity. Capacity for qualified workers or employees or services on the continent. I take, for example, all the hospitals that even are constructed, you would hardly go and get quality kind of treatment on the continent because all the doctors that studied in the diaspora are working in the diaspora. And now even Dr. Arikana was making analysis of doctors, Nigerian doctors in the United States are more than, I mean, we're talking about more than the ones that are existing on the continent, of course, even more than American-born doctors in the USA. This is alarming that we have the infrastructure. Sometimes we say we don't have the infrastructures. We do have them. But then if you want quality surgery, quality treatment, and there is no expert because all this competence is out of the content, then we have not just a leadership problem, but we have a capacity problem. What about that?
Yes, just as I was saying, lad, when we look into the continent, again we come back to the education that we have. In most cases, our education system is not programming us to develop enough skills within the continent and then to bring the development that we want. But in most cases, what do? We have to leave the continent in order to get a quality education. And once we leave, we don't come back. So that is what we need to solve. Now, our leaders, our countries must take actions in the kind of institutions that we have as a people. We must have good institutions that are going to provide enough and quality education for the African youths to be job creators, even when they leave grade 12. Because that is the problem. Somebody will graduate at grade 12 in Africa. You ask the individual, what do you want to become? They cannot tell you. And that is sad. Somebody that spent 12 years in school and yet cannot decide the career pattern that they want to join in. So that is where we have the problem. What type of education are we teaching? This is the 21st century. People must develop the ability to network. People must develop the ability to understand leadership. People must develop the ability in business ideas and etc. People must have the ability to develop themselves with scientific knowledge. People must have the ability to embrace technology. This is the kind of education that the African continent needs because that is what the services is open for. That is what the society is waiting to see. The society is not just waiting for people to go to school, graduate, and bring their papers. No, the papers don't solve societal problems. It is the mind that solves societal problems. So that is why we need to rethink about the education system that we have and about the examinations that we give individuals within the continent. I'm sorry to say, but in West Africa alone, those of us that normally sit for the WAEG and etc., if an individual fail grade 12 examination, we do not see those individuals as people that are going to be responsible in the society. That is the end of story for their lives.
Correct.
We do not respect them. We see them as failures. And let me tell you, there is this story that I always repeat telling individuals. When I was going to primary school, with a group of individuals. Among us, one of us was the biggest. We used to mock at him because in class we were all defeating him. But then when the pounding machine in the community has a problem, he was the one that fixed it. So we were laughing at him in the class, but then he was solving a societal problem that we could not. So we were being supported, we were being promoted to continue learning, doing exams and passing, and nobody helped him to finance his education system. Today he is back at the village. That is the kind of mindset that we have within the continent, and that must change because these institutions have not been doing just to the continent. We must be able to produce individuals whose sole objective are going to receive the quality education and bring the change that we want as a people. And all African government have to work towards supporting this kind of initiatives because we already have them in some communities today. Some African countries today are doing extremely well because they've heavily invest in quality education. They've heavily invest in technology, and they have heavily invest in teaching their own people about the reality and about the history, about the value and about self-patriotism. Again, I want to refer this to the same agenda of Pan-Africanism. It was about uplift and self-reliance. And you cannot have self-reliance if you are not well equipped with knowledge, if you are not well equipped with a skill that you can use to develop yourself. And again, you cannot uplift yourself as a race if you continue to beg or rely on another race for survival. That is what we need to defeat. You come to realize that in most cases, this is what happened within the African continent. Today, the shortest cut to make money is joining politics. So we need to understand that to build a better future, we need good leaders. And to have a good leader, you need quality education and a good ground that is going to mold individual to drive the African agenda that we want to see. Thank you.
Yes, funny enough, Ousman, and I'm just reading a comment that Abubakari Abbas said. Uncle Gaddafi said Africans go to Europe to look for the stolen resources that Europeans stole from you. And I want to make a little bit of contribution to this point into saying that, unfortunate, we are saying that our education system was a European or was brought through, a Western system of education, but that is not actually the Western system of education that is practiced in the West. At the West, particularly, I'm talking about Germany. Germany, where I reside, they have this really what they call vocational skill training education. Like I take the case of your friend that you're talking about. He was actually a community social worker or a social pedagogy. That would have been his own call. And so in each step, whether from the primary level, and you realize that move to the next step, you have an opportunity at that lowest level to follow what you are skilled oriented to do. So you have a possibility to do a 3 years practical training, which they call it the vocational training. And at that stage, you already can start creating yourself or either engaging in work. I can guarantee you most of 40% of the economy, particularly in the southern region of Germany, where I come from, are made by these small family holdings and industries. And these family holdings are those that left the primary level and did a profession or did a vocational training for 3 years, and they started a company. And you guess what? 60% of the revenue of this region is being produced by these small holdings. Now, we're talking about digitalization. We're saying the world has to go to that. You know how talented your generation is on the continent. Tell me more.
Yes. Now, if you look into Africans, if you look into youths, for instance, I have, friends that I have, been in school with, and now they are able to develop so many things, developing applications, using mobile technology. Some of them in computer science and etc. Some individual in engineering, doing extremely well, even within the Gambia here. But the problem is, with all this knowledge, with all the skills that they have, some of them, if you interact with them, they're like, you cannot even realize this potential as an individual in the country in which you are.
Correct.
So that is why we need to have platforms where Africans can meet each other and serve as an inspiration for each other.
Correct.
If somebody went to India, for instance, and study about computer science, another reason why India is up there today is about the technology that they have and the advancement of technology. So we have individuals that are traveling everywhere, from going to India, going to other African states, going to the West, like in Europe, going to America and others, going to China with all these skills. When they comes back, for instance, to the continent, they either find it difficult to exhibit those talents and skills, or to have a platform where they could network with other Africans. Remember, if we just focus on our various countries, the markets become limited.
Yes.
We need to open up to expand the market. This is why Europe is doing it today. Germany is not Germany just because like they have Germans only, no, but because markets are open from
Yes.
Germany to Holland, from Germany to Poland, from Germany to France, to Italy and others. Those are the kind of connections that we need. We need road and transport services that are going to open up the African market, making sure that the African youths can easily exhibit their talent and are able to network and exchange ideas with market products with other parts of the continent. But today, with all the talent that you have, you can come invest in a country like the Gambia, and it becomes very difficult for you to reach, let's say, a market like in Nigeria. When it is in fact easy for us to buy things from the Western world and import it in Africa than for us to have an internal trade among ourselves. Those are the kind of difficulties that makes it difficult for the African youths. But when it comes to the skills, when it comes to the talent, we have people that are ready to do this. We have people that are traveling all over just developing skills. And some of them just need little motivation to bring them on board.
Correct. Correct.
Because yeah,
Go ahead.
like the only time when you see them moving away is because they believe that the ground is not for them. I have to be realistic with you. Some people will call me and said, after my studies, I came back to this particular country. That is where I am from. But then because of so and so, I have to go back to the West. That is the kind of thing that we need to change. We must provide a better ground for the Africans, for the youth to exhibit their talents, their skills, and etc. Only that we can enhance the development that we want. We must understand that development in general is an activity of a youthful population.
Correct.
Because the old people are getting tired. They're going to retire very soon. So we are the one that should take the challenge. And once we do not look inward as a continent, trying to see how best we can improve the society and etc., we will still have some outsiders training a special group within the continent, impose them on us,
Correct.
and then we'll be making all decisions on our behalf. And that will always be disastrous. That is
Correct.
what we need to avoid as a people.
Correct. I'm just reading a comment from wait, what's he saying here? From Mozali Mansa. Mozali Mansa says India first designed its own paradigm from bottom up by the Indians, and so Africans should start this development paradigm from bottom to top. Of course, that's what you're
Yes.
saying. Development. Yeah, go ahead.
Yes. Let me come to that.
Yes.
If you look at India's policy model and their development model, it is bottom to top in a sense that you see at the village level, they inform the district level. And it is the district level within India that informs the regional level. That is how it moves on to the state.
Mhm.
That is how real development model should evolve. That is how you capture the real problem of the people. And
Mhm.
that is how you capture the real solution to the people's problem. But if you impose policies, if you adopt policies without consulting the beneficiaries, it does not become theirs. They see it as something new, something strange.
Correct.
You're just imposing it to them. They don't see it as they are a part of it. But
Mhm.
once they initiated, once they took the lead, then therefore we can register the kind of development that we want. For instance, like the community driven development, where the community initiates everything.
Mhm.
So you as an outsider or you as a policymaker, you as a government have a responsibility in helping them shape a pattern through which they will be able to, bring those problems on board, find a solution to it, and then to realize the kind of development that they want as a people. This is why today India is performing.
Mhm.
And we see them every year in the statistics, they've
Mhm.
constantly, been improving.
Correct. And then one thing that you're saying from this bottom top. So we are agreeing that governments, as a matter of fact, don't do innovations or create institutions. They all come from the people, and government has no choice but to adapt the policies to work in alliance with these innovations and institutions. That's what you're saying.
Yeah.
Hmm.
Like in,
Correct.
in in most of the policy, yeah, in most of the policies that we are making, we must make sure that our policies and etc. are influenced or are informed by the individuals to whom they are targeting, be
Mhm.
it the organizations and as well as our governments and etc. That is exactly what we need in the continent, and that is exactly what we need as a people.